Hi, and welcome back to my channel. I wanted to talk about car safety today. Iberia and I have traveled a lot, and most of these travels have been long-haul car travels. So we have really gotten this thing down to almost a science. The first thing that you need to think about is where to place your dog. So the usual place to put a dog is obviously in the back, and some people will go so far as to put them in the back of a pickup, obviously, which I don't necessarily advocate, but I know that some people do it. But even in a closed car or in an SUV, then the place in the back usually is reserved for the dog or suitcases and the dog. That can be a good practice, but it can be very, very dangerous if either your suitcases are not really held well to the side of the vehicle. And this actually happened to one of my friends who had the dog in the back with suitcases, and they kind of shifted while they were traveling, and her dog got really scared and started developing kind of car anxiety from then on, which is something that you don't want to do. And the other thing to keep in mind, if you're going to put your dog in the back, is that the back gets a lot hotter than the front of the car, even though you have the AC on, and even if you have those tiny little kind of AC vents in the back. So if you live in a place that's really hot, so like the southern US or southern Europe, then the back of the car is absolutely not a safe place for your dog. So the best place for your dog is actually in the middle of the car, in the middle seats. That is the safest place. And obviously that's a place where you can actually hook up their travel harness. And we'll talk about travel harnesses in a second. Now you may, if you live in a very hot climate, like when I lived in Italy, decide if you have a small dog to put him in the front. Now the only reason why I would say that that's actually appropriate is when it's really, really warm. My car is very small and it does have an air conditioning unit, but it doesn't have vents in the back and it's just not that powerful. So when I lived in a really hot climate, I have a hard time with Iberia, even though she was in the back and in the middle and I had the AC aimed at her, it would get really hot and she would get really uncomfortable. So then during the summer, I would choose to put her in the front seat. Now, if you choose to do that, you need to keep in mind that you have airbags in the front, and airbags are not meant for dogs. So you do need to turn off your airbags, which can make traveling a little bit more dangerous. So these are things to keep in mind.
Now, as you can see, for safety, Iberia is in the middle of the back seat, and she's got a couple of things around her that we have actually found really help with car travels, especially long ones. So let's go over them together. First of all, this fantastic thing. So this is actually a seat cover for cars for dogs, but you can actually get away with just using like a waterproof picnic blanket. This is fantastic. So I didn't used to use it, but I realized that there are instances where having something that will protect your seat comes in really handy. We actually just went through a trip where we're supposed to drive for 6 hours, turned out to be an 11-hour drive, and because of the traffic, there was instances where we couldn't stop, and Iberia needed to go to the bathroom. Now, she didn't have any accidents, but had she had an accident, at least my seats were covered. This works fantastic for people as well, so I highly recommend it. The other thing we have here is an extra pillow. So this is your choice. I have an elderly dog, and I know that the seats can be a little bit uncomfortable. As you can see, she is tethered. She has a harness. We'll talk about the harnesses in another minute. But so she doesn't really get to move around a lot. Obviously, there are walk breaks during the drive, but it's kind of nice to give them a little bit of an extra pillow. And this is actually a pillow that I usually keep at home, so it has the smells of home, which makes our dog feel at home and a little bit more comfortable during the car trip. I also have these. So this is just a cooling blanket, and it's fantastic for the summer. So we have been using it for years. This is half of an original cooling blanket because obviously my dog is very small, but if you have a larger dog, you can buy bigger sizes. I'm going to link the one that I feel is the closest to this one. What you want to keep in mind is that it will keep cool for quite a few hours. It has this gel inside of it. You can feel that it's kind of granular, and it will basically absorb your dog's heat or your heat as well. I have friends who use it for themselves. And while doing that, it will cool down your dog. You do need to keep in mind that this kind of blanket will get warm, and once it's warm, it's not going to be as helpful. So if you are using one, which I actually highly recommend, there are two things to keep in mind. I actually keep one in the fridge before I leave, especially if I'm going down to the south of Europe because it's very warm, so that I can put it very chilly on Iberia's pillow, then I can put Iberia on it and she's a lot more comfortable. And I also keep a spare in a little cooler that I always travel with. Iberia is raw fed, so I do bring her raw food usually with us on vacation whenever I can. And I will put this in a cooler so that I can switch it through the drive. I do, however, always keep in mind that if I have a drive where I can't put it in a cooler for whatever reason, then I may only be able to use it for the drive there and not for the drive back if it's a one-day trip. And of course, we also have a harness. Now, this is Iberia's harness. It's a harness I bought here in Germany, but I will link the one that I love It's from Sleepy Pod. It's amazing. It's the only one that's actually been tested, and it passed really rigorous testing for safety. Leaving your dog free in the car is not safe for you or for your dog. And this is not just about accidents. It's also when you're driving, maybe you're in the mountains, or maybe, and this actually happened to me in town, where I had to brake because another dog actually crossed my path. So I had to brake very quickly, and thank God that Iberia was tied down. Otherwise, she would have flown against the front seats. And that's obviously very dangerous. So you always want to make sure that they are harnessed, or if you have a very small dog, let's say 14 pounds or smaller, then you definitely want to get a crate or a travel carrier, because they don't make harnesses that are good enough for animals that are that small. And I also want you to keep in mind, and this is why I recommend the Sleepy Pod, and the only reason I don't have it on Iberia is because when I got Iberia, Sleepy Pod only shipped to the United States. It is now finally available in Europe, so I'm in the process of actually buying her one. Was that this harness is tethered here with a hook. Now the hook has to be very, very short, because if your dog were to fly forward with a long tether, that might actually put a lot of stress on their spine, and there have been dogs that have been injured and ended up not being able to walk after an accident. So this is why I do have one with a tether, but it's very, very short, and I am in the process of looking to buy a better one. And once you figured out where to put your dog and then how to protect your dog, yourself, and your car for the trip, then you need to look at your planning. On the day of your trip, make sure to plan for enough time before you actually leave to go ahead and take your dog for a walk. A tired dog will travel a lot better than a dog that is fresh and has a lot of energy. And you might also want to consider whether you should be feeding your dog in the morning or not. If your dog tends to get car sick, then you might want to either have them skip that meal or give them a little bit of a smaller portion to kind of save yourself, your car, and your dog, of course, the embarrassment of having to throw up while you are on a long haul drive. And during your planning, you might also want to consider how many stops and how long you're going to stop through your drive. Now, Iberia and I have been traveling so long that she basically falls asleep in the car. She's very comfortable. She didn't used to be. She used to have terrible anxiety, but we've really gotten used to it. So I know that I basically have to stop at the same time where she would usually go to the bathroom when we're at home, because for her it's just basically another day. But if your dog has a little bit of anxiety, or if you have a younger, or in my case is almost there, if you have an older dog, you may need to stop more often. And especially if you have a younger dog, you may need to stop and actually give them a little bit of exercise. So maybe take a moment and plan your route and look for places where you can easily stop and give them a 10-15 minute run around, so that they actually can use a little bit of that energy and can, especially if they are maybe sick to their stomach, they can actually settle down before you go back into the car. And as you're looking at where to stop, make sure that rest stops actually accept dogs, because some may not allow you to take your dog in with you. And obviously leaving a dog in a parked car in the summer is absolutely out of the question. So you can see I am actually parked in the shade, which is another tip. Make sure that you park in the shade, because it's going to keep the temperature in your car lower. And don't forget that just because your car is running and has the AC on, it doesn't mean that it's going to stay cool. So a police dog actually died a few years back because obviously they were in the police car, which is set up to keep dogs, and had the car running and the AC was running, but because the car was not actually driving, it didn't have enough power to produce enough cool air to keep the temperature inside cool enough, and unfortunately the police dog died. So that's definitely not an option. And the problem is, for some of us, when we get to the rest stop, we desperately have to go to the bathroom ourselves, and we can't leave our dog in the car because we're traveling alone. There's nobody to watch them. So it's just a small thing, but it makes a huge difference when you're in that situation. And it's really simple when you're looking on Google Maps to just check and see what kind of restaurants they have, or what kind of rest stops they have, and whether dogs are allowed or not. This all can seem like a lot the first time you do it, but trust me, it becomes second nature, and I don't even think about it. I just automatically arrange everything. And that will happen for you as well. So all you've left to do now is to travel and to make it to your awesome vacation. And if you have a vacation home, check out this video. I go over everything that I look for in an Airbnb and everything that I do to make sure that Iberia will be happy, the owner will be happy, and I will get awesome reviews at the end of my stay. Have a safe trip. Thank you for watching. Give your dog and cat a kiss from us, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!